you know, the car already left the play. I'm just trying to catch up with it, yeah, with the narration or whatever. So, all right, it's on now? Yeah, all right, so through what happened to me seemingly in recovery and before recovery, certain things were clear, that I was screwed completely, and that I wasn't managerial quality. Yeah. Now, I had been beaten into a condition of malleability, so I didn't totally flip out over that, which I had maybe for years, but it was more of a subdued, you know, reluctance of, okay, yeah, so this thing has failed. Yeah. And it became obvious I can't use this thing that's failed to fix this thing that's failed. You know, it's a simple thing. Einstein said it in his own way. You can't go to what produced the problem for a solution, you know. So in AA we say, in recovery they would say that the problem resides in the mind, and let's say the mind, there is no mind, there's a brain, yeah? But there are thoughts, you know. So the thoughts, and then there's memories, and then there's perceptions that are interpreted, yeah. So the world's made up, you know, in a way, world, yeah. So let's say if you have a virus, everything's going to look bleaker, and then when you get well, everything gets a little brighter. Yeah, the virus changes the lens color, so to speak. Yeah, and yet the persistence of keep calling it you all the time. I feel shitty. I feel that. I feel that. No, you're really feeling the virus moving around the system, and it's kicking this can and that. Yeah, yeah, in a way. So something is occupied, what you call your sovereign territory, Paul, which is, it's occupied quite a lot. On much more subtle levels, like mental winds and emotional winds that blow through. And the system, though, no matter what comes through, will basically say it came through me, or I caused it to come through, yeah? Or if it isn't me, it can be a God, but made in my own image, not, yeah, God made, you were made in God's image, but a God that's made in my image, you know? So, so then there's that subtle, like, so the thing is, so the one self can't get out of self. So here's the self you want to get out of, and here's the self that wants to get out. Now, obviously, you've now objectified the one self, that which you want to get out of, but you're subjectifying the other self, the one that wants to get out of the other self. Yes? You know what I mean? So now this self has been subjectified, and there's been an objectification of what you call that fuck, the crazy self. Yeah? So now I'm the saner self. Whatever. But the subjectification of this idea, yeah, and by objectifying what it felt is the only thing that's keeping this self down is that self, all the qualities of that self, you know, that I've got to get out of, yeah, at all costs, yeah. The hope and the delusion is everything will get great when I sufficiently get out of that self, but underneath as this self, you know, a little the fine print. So self can't get out of self. So the self that you're recognizing isn't the self that's trying to get out of self. That's the one you thought you were in, or you're still in, yeah? The one that wants to get out is the new, refined, subtler self. Yeah, so it's not an equal partnership in a way. It's not like self wants to get out of self. No, it's self, objectified, yeah? The subjective self wants to get out of that. Yeah? Then the self that's now given the word me wants to get out of the self that's now that, you know? So one self is, you know, aspect of it is made into other, and then me wants to get out of that other. But as the other too. So once I saw that, and seeing it isn't, you know, you saw it visually. Though you see it, you can see it visually, you see it in pictures. But you saw it, meaning you got it, like Grok did, you know, that thing from, whatever that, science fiction book. You understand it, and so it tells you, oh, wait a minute, see, recognizing the objectified self produced a lot of hope that I could, I could be the authentic self once I scraped off all the remnants of that fucking objectified self I made. Scraped it all off. It would be, yeah. So there's a lot of hope gets kindled with that, fired up, yeah. A lot of seeking and working and stuff like that. But it's still defined by the contract, which is self can't get out of self. It doesn't say which self can't get out of self. It says self, no matter what self it is, can't get out of self. Yeah, so this is like a wall in a way. When you run into it, you'd hope that you back up and then everything gets reassessed instead of backing up and running into it again. And after this fails, just getting into another vehicle and thinking another modality is going to do it or another modality is going to do it. All the while blaming you, but I've objectified self. It's only because I'm not doing enough. I should have stayed there longer. I should have kissed the feet for 5 more seconds. I should have walked around that temple more. It's all fun. So, but the fact is, self can't get out of self. It's a fact. People get to it in a lot of, hopefully quickly, sometimes slowly, sometimes never, sometimes quickly. Let's hope quickly is available. That you realize, when you realize self can't get out of self, it doesn't initiate a looking for escape. It disarms all those drives to get out, because there's been a rude awakening of the utter futility of trying to get out of self as self. You just know it to your bones, It's just like when I got struck sober, I was convinced of something. It wasn't just that one something that was matched with convinced. You have the ability to be convinced of a lot of things, yeah, if you stay open to it. So things will reveal themselves to you as unreal if you're there, if you have the eyes to see, and we do. So there, self can't get out of self. So what happens? Is it another call to arms? No, it's a disarming. You realize finally that engine, yeah, you realize the wheel, the engine of the hamster wheel is you, yeah. Without a hamster, there's no wheel. It's just sitting, it's just a circle, maybe metal or whatever. It's the hamster that gives it its name. And of course, the hamster would like to get out off the hamster wheel. But when he gets off the hamster wheel, he can't recognize it as the wheel because it's not moving, so it gets, yes. He says, so when you hit that, when you really get self can't get out of self, what happens? You're not trying to escape. You may be still trying to distract, but escape is out of the question. And then you see when the engine turns off of seeking and that drive, when it turns off, the quiet informs you of the loudness of the engine when it was on. You have something to compare it with, and you go, I've been moving on this fucking self-perpetuating moving sidewalk for a long time, constantly, and you can boil down to most of it of wanting to get out of self as self. Really. One way is, if I do everything it's asked me to do, then maybe he'll let me out. That's one modality. There's tons of things, but they're all rooted really in, you want to get out of you as you, and it's impossible. Yeah. So when that's put to an end, it's so beautiful, because now you realize the way to get out of self, which is seen to be the drive of all drives, is to realize you're not in self. Yeah? So that which is getting out, trying to get out of that which it's not, is also not you. You see them both finally. You don't just see the objectified self, you see the subjectified self. Yeah? And you see them both as not you. The subjectified self, that's, yes, the thinker, whatever that, yes, all that stuff. And then see how the chips fall, yeah? I can tell you through my observation of what's happened over the time, you're on to something, to the point where this is the last answer in my experience, which I never had a last answer in the experiential realm. It always would be an answer for a while, but then there'd be new, improved, radical, extreme, or revamped, or energized answer. Yeah, it was just never the last answer. And yet, in a sense, that's what it is. It put an end, and it hasn't ever started again, really, for years and years and years, which is a pretty good validation of it. Yeah, it's like, I'm not saying a week or two, I'm saying years and years and years, that any like committee or conference call about self getting out of self, when you look at the phone, it says scam likely. That's what it says. It says scam likely. So you just mute it and it goes away, and then you get another call, scam like, you know, it tells yourself, you know, and if you just read the sign, yeah, you don't go in. Now, if it says, this could be from Paul, then maybe, you mean he's got a good fucking answer finally? No, it's scam likely. So basically, what do you find out? Tons of things. Now you have the ability to enjoy peace of mind because you have the ability to stop, really. Yeah. Stop and then enjoy peace of mind. And then in time, you'll enjoy peace of mind while moving. Yeah. It's just, the ability is there, it just hasn't been used, yeah, too much. So it doesn't say you're going to produce peace of mind. It basically implies there is peace of mind, but you'll have the ability to enjoy it. So peace of mind is available, but you don't seem to be available to it, yeah? Why is that? And then you learn all about what you're not. You know, why I'm not available to peace is because I'm available to time. And time puts the kibosh on peace because while you're in peace, he'll say, will you be in peace tomorrow? And then you get fucking anxious that you won't be in peace, and there goes the peace. Yeah? Peace eaten with time doesn't last. It just doesn't. So, I was at a meeting today, and this person, I love the person, but he's going, okay, I went to this group, and first, you've got to stop paying attention to thoughts. Give me a freaking break. Sort of like, oh, really? I haven't thought of that for 55, 70 years, you know? It's like, oh, thanks for the remark. Thanks for the invitation. I could have if I would have. I would have if I could have. So, see that you're not the thinker of the thoughts. Yeah? So you lose interest in thoughts. Just trying to stop thoughts is a lot of interest in thoughts. Yeah? So, it's a losing of interest. Yeah? So, how do you lose interest in the thoughts? You don't try. You lose interest in the idea of being the thinker. Yeah? Because the thinker is what's giving the meaning to the thoughts. The thoughts are like a box, can be filled with avocados, can be filled with fucking lead pipes, can be filled with TNT. The mind sort of supplies the content, and the thought is like the context. Yeah? The thought, and then there's some download into the thoughts. And then you can see the download, and you can see the little fuse, and the fuse is mine and why. So if you see the fuse, you got a live one. the mind can set off some major explosions. No one else will feel or see, but you will. So, so all right, are you the thinker? You know, it's just this. I mean, it's an assumed. It's an assumed fact, isn't it? We just assume we're the thinker because we're aware of something, and that sort of means we had something to do with it somehow. You know, and when you're in self-centeredness, it's very extreme. You having something to do with everything. Because I always use the example of when my father, when I was 6 years old, my father got ill, and my mother talked to me about it, saying, you know, Dad's not going to be able to play with you as much. You know, he won't be able to take you to the baseball field, stuff like that. They brought in the family doctor. He told me, and it didn't matter what they said. I could understand it. But in me, I felt like, what did I do to cause my father not to want to play with me? This is self-centeredness. This is what we're saddled with, seemingly. See, the bargain, when you make the deal with the devil, oh yeah, I'd like to be the doer, the thinker, the feeler. Okay, now all the doing and the thinking and the feeling has the ability to own you now. Basically, that's the deal. You want to own them? Sure, you can own them. Yet you better look at the other side of the coin, because this is a dualistic little event. They're going to own you. Yeah? And so the Course in Miracles, I don't know if you've heard of it, so Course in Miracles says it in a beautiful way. It says, you and I are the dreaming of the dream. Again, I don't like dream, I like dreaming. So, but the word is, you and I are the dreaming of the dream. We forget that we're dreaming. So to forget that you're dreaming, obviously, one aspect is the dreaming has to be taken to be real. That would allow you to forget that you're dreaming, yes? And how does this place get relevance but from this thing? So the dreaming is in the act of being identified as the dreamt, yeah? And now in this position of being the dreamt, not knowing that you're giving everything all the meaning it has, everything that you've been giving meaning to now has the ability to affect you as the dreamt. So you had an invulnerability as the dreaming, the thoughts, the feelings, because where were they going to attack the thoughts? Yeah, you were no thingness, yeah? But taking yourself to be a target or an object, you could be fired on, yeah? And so that's what happens. So you and I are the dreaming of the dreaming. As you and I, we don't know that. We may understand it intellectually, but we don't know it because we're relying somehow on these eyes that see a world, and it sees the world as real, yeah? So these two eyes see things, and it gives a reality of these things. So we're in the act of forgetting that we're dreaming all day by the identification as the dreamt. And then as the dreamt, we forget, or it's not apparent to us that we're giving everything all the meaning it has. And now all the meaning we've been given to everything suddenly can affect us. Yeah? And you can see what happens when we're affected by that which we're dreaming as the dreamt. Then resentments, fucking blame, victim, all this shit arises, yeah, in this little petri dish of the forgetting that you're dreaming and taking yourself to be the dreamt. Now, the dreamt, this idea of being the dreamt has its own fucking security system, because you'll hear all day about dreaming as the dreamt. It doesn't go anywhere. You want to hear about the dreamt from the dreaming. Yeah? Every meeting should have these warnings to begin with. Let's get the fundamental thing right. The message isn't to you, nor is it from me. It's appearing that way, but it ain't. The message is from what I am to what you are. Yeah? So I'm not trying to convince you of what you are. I'm trying to talk to what you are about you. Yeah? Because from here, you're not that. Yeah? From here, you're all that. And that gravitational pull of being that will make everything to fit you. So it neuters the message. When you hear a description of what you are as what you're not, it neuters the message. What you end up is having concepts about a mythical, metaphysical idea of what you are, all the while being exactly that. Yeah, it's incredible to me. So when the futility of this, transcending this, I mean, when it really, like, you know, if you put a cloth in dye, you just sit there for a while, and then it catches, you know, now it's that color. Even if though it was like a light off-white, you've had it in the brown dye enough, now it's saturated, yeah? Yeah, that's how it sort of is, yeah. So, at least get this connected, really. Everything you read, you know what I mean? If it's a spiritual axiom, everything when you're reading it is like a dog watching you. And then that one little nugget will get to what you are. Hey, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. Now you're poring over it, writing, what was it? What does it mean? You're like just being sent around the corner for a half an hour. I read it. That's why they have 800 pages, just to keep you fucking busy. And the one nugget gets through, and it triggers not you as this, but at what you are. And then suddenly you may see you from that point of view, which is quite revealing. Yes, quite revealing. Instead of working so hard to see that from this point of view, because it's not possible. Because this looking for that is that looking. This looking for that is that looking. So that looking for that doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Just like self can't get out of self, they both negate each other. All right, you've now seen what you're not as a self, thinking that's why I never understood everything. But now you got your little shiny self. They're both fucking lead, yeah? All you see is allow them to negate each other, really. I'm neither this nor that. Ding, instead of, I'm not that, but I'm this. No, because this is just like that. So it's the this, that, this, that, this, that, on and on and on, yeah? This is different, it is. It puts a stop to intense investigation. You just let some of these ideas land, yeah, and then let them, you know, unload, and then see what happens, yeah. And then after years, you can say, hey, I've noticed I've been traveling lighter for a long, 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 long time, and when I hear people share what a heroic thing it is for them to travel lighter just for a few hours, you know, on the weekend at the retreat, and I feel like I've been traveling lighter for 20 years without fucking much effort or thought whatsoever. I'm thinking, wow, I got a bargain here, yeah? It's not demanding much from me at all. And actually, I've lost the whole, as soon as I smell like I've got to do something, it throws me off that trail. Yeah, just, yeah. I just don't believe you can do yourself out of the doer. I don't. I think all the doing will reinforce the doer. I do. I mean, I've taken it, I didn't take it all the way. I took it far enough to know it ain't going anywhere. No, maybe you want to, but I didn't get to the end of the line. Well, go ahead. I think I'd rather save time and get off the bus. Yeah. Yeah, so basically, we just been trying to, you know, just break down each strand of the fabric of the mechanism to see in it, you know? Just, it's like a tiny little endeavor, seeing what you're not, understanding what you're not, and going over the experiences of what you're not, because it will tell you you're not that. It will. I swear to God. I mean, the evidence is already piled up. You don't need to, you got all the information you could ever need. It's just how it's being triggered, yeah? If it's you trying to get to the key of the wisdom, that ain't wise, yeah? Just see you're not that which needs to find wisdom, and you'll be wise at that moment, yeah? It won't turn into anything. Just because you're wise now doesn't mean you're the one who has wisdom. No, there's never any ownership in it. It's just verbing, complete verbing. Yeah? And I'll tell you, it's a nice way to go. I mustn't have been that well as this little apparatus to do what I used to do to try to get out of self. I mean, I wasn't, oh, I played an extra round of golf. No, to get out of self. It was like a fucking occupation for me. It was. And I was willing, and I did almost anything I could do. And I can say with great surety, you can't transcend an imaginary place. Yeah? If this was a real place, you could get out of it. But it's not real. Yeah? And you're wanting to get out of it, first of all, isn't you wanting to get out of it. It's just the wanting to get out of it that implies a you. Please see this too. All right. The two things. First, talking to what you are about what you're not, instead of talking to what you're not about what you are. And then the second one was what I just said. What was it? Yeah. That's an important one.
Wanting to get out.
Oh yes, yes. Wanting to get out. So that which wants to get out isn't you. Yeah. No. So there. So the whole thing is really like, if you look at recovery is you stop trying to get out of self because you were never in self, and then you stop trying to get into the moment because you've never been out of the moment. So it's a very big reversal. And you know what? I'll tell you something. All this has very little influence than the big fucking dynamics, right? If you have the horse, right, behind the cart, it has a huge effect than all the little other shit that you may see. Yeah? If you're walking backwards thinking you're moving forwards, it's a major offness, yeah? So these things are big things that get flipped, yeah? You see, the way to experience being out of self is realizing you were never in self. Yeah? And being in the moment is not a result, it's just a fact. You've never been out of a moment. That's huge to shift just those 2 blocks. I mean, these 2 blocks, a lot of behavior occurs from this way, that you're out of the moment. A lot of fucking unbelievable machinations of the mental state riffs on that assumed fact. Guilt, fucking you missed the boat, you wish I should have been there instead of you. Tons of machinations it can go just fiddle around with all the time. You're taking that huge block from it, yeah? And then the idea of constantly wanting to get out of how it feels and this and shit like that, if you see you're not that, which is trying to get out of self, yeah, that's out of self. That's a huge block. When that goes, I try to use it as the horse in front of the cart, but these are major, let's say you had all this stuff going on, and then the person, it was like there's a story about a guy who fixed an incredible engine on this huge boat, yeah? And no one could fix it, he's the expert, and all he did was change one little cog, and he'd get paid like $100,000, but he didn't do much, yeah, because the one little cog was throwing the whole thing off. These are like the little cogs, yeah? You're trying to get out of what you're not in, and you're trying to get into what you're not out of. And you could, under those two categories, you could put a lot of your day under. Tons of it, yeah? So now you see it, all right? And does it demand action? It doesn't. Because the actions you can see, as the great Zen statement from Faith Mind was, you can't use activity to produce stillness. That would be activity. See, this is what you see clear. You see, my wanting to be still is the problem. Yeah? I'm trying to use activity to get still, and I use my example of that guy I knew in Australia, very rich guy, and he had a huge property, and he had different people living on it, and we had a place on it. And every day, he'd drive around his golf cart around 10 after 5, and tell us all to fucking be quiet, because at 5:30, he was going to meditate for an hour. So, he was exhibiting absolutely no peace whatsoever in the hopes of having peace at 5:30. You see the deal? That's not a rare occurrence. That's different degrees and flavors of that over tons of time. Yeah? You see it, but it's so many different shades. It's all this, and it's rooted. You can watch it, where it comes from. Yeah? There's, the smoke that's being blown isn't 800 zillion, it's like 4 or 5, and then it just takes all these forms, yeah? So if you go, you'll see where they go. You will. You'll see what's happening. And in my sense, it just was just disarming. You're already disarmed, yeah, then it's disarmed, because it's just like in AA. You surrender, and then it leads to surrender, yeah? You've been convinced that there's no way any life run on self is going to be successful. You've been convinced of that, so you stay in surrender. You're not like, that which is taking it, giving it, surrendering it, taking it back isn't you. You just know it isn't you anymore. That the innermost that was convinced 31 years ago is still convinced. Nothing has changed his mind of those two basic things. I'm not, I am screwed under my own management. Yeah? So, that's how it's evolved to this point, and I haven't moved. Actually, the evolution has creeped to a halt, because you gotten past like the one-celled amoeba. You can't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go, because all this is just a projection of this. So why? What's the point? What's the point where the shadow has been taken to be real, and the real is taken to be the shadow? I mean, you gotta and you can't, see, the shadow can't, it's always, the shadow, yes, the shadow can't switch it, because this isn't any different than that. All right, you objectify the shadow, and now it's subjectified as a super shadow, It doesn't, this is the dance, there's no way out that, yeah? The way out is realizing you're not in. It's just that, it's like a binary system, like HAL in 2001. It's just going off, But you're there. You are the awareness of it, and you are the awareness not of it. Yeah, you are that. Why not? It would be nice to have a little of that seep into this day. It's a fact. It doesn't need to be proven. And it's no rush, because it's always so. And when it hits you sufficiently, or you pass away, it'll be like this never happened, because it hasn't. This is dreaming. Literally, the definition of dreaming. If something comes and goes, that's dreaming. If something appears in a field that's already there, and then disappears in the field that's already there, that's dreaming. And where's the dreaming coming from? That which is disappearing and appearing? No, that which is always there. Yeah. I'm afraid to get any closer because then I'll be completely obsolete, which I've known was going to be my fate. But it still feels weird. I knew, it's sort of like I knew it was coming, like death. But hey, does it have to rush up so quick? So stick with us, yeah. Just let it. Can you imagine if you sat down as if you were never going to get up? You know, just sat down and just see where it would go. Yeah. But I'm a real believer in the futility of things, because that's how they teach us, really. You stop relying on things that are unreliable. Yeah. And by the effects, you'll realize how influential they were, because a lot of shit arises from these false assumptions that we're believing, you know, they do. The false assumptions give life to a lot of shit, maybe for 5 seconds, maybe 20 years, maybe 40 years. It's finite, but yeah. So why would you want to be, try to, hit all the bubbles? Just, see the bubble machine. Yeah. See it as not you, and you may lose an interest in the bubbles. Yeah. So, yes, let's, any questions? No?
You just have to say any questions without saying no, because, people are like, I know.
I do not brook insubordination. You get 5 whacks and they don't. All right, well, let's
Pass the basket.
Let's pass the basket. And Tuesday night, November 26th, will be at 7 o'clock at Falkirk Cultural Center. Very nice.
San Rafael.
Heritage, what?
In San Rafael.
In San Rafael. 7 o'clock. And then we have the meeting Saturday, and there'll be a meeting Thanksgiving Eve. Oh. Yeah, we'll give Thanksgiving for nothing, like we do every week.
Amen.
Yes. Yeah, so, all right? All right.